Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Major rumours emerging going into the Las Vegas Grand Prix. The Charles Leclerc's contract with Ferrari may well be ending sooner than that 2029 release date. Rumour has it Aston Martin are not just interested, but conversations and negotiations are relatively advanced, especially around the 2027 season. Leclerc looks likely to stay for at least next year, but Aston Martin want him shortly after that. Alonso is nearing 50, then 40 at that moment. Would that be the perfect time for Leclerc to leave Ferrari, especially if he doesn't have faith they have any chance to turn it around? Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new. As always, plenty to get into today. This is Las Vegas. We'll go back there in a second. As I was recording yesterday's video, they announced another special livery. So we're doing another one. And to be fair, this is pretty spectacular. But yeah, I don't know if you guys are tired of like all the special liveries. We got another one every weekend. But this is the new Racing Bull, and they might well have cooked with this, I can't lie. Under the lights, I thought the Williams looked pretty good yesterday, but this is, I think, a wonderful take on that Racing Bull's livery. We'll see if they can score any points, any decent points this weekend. Certainly Aston Martin are fighting for every single point in the World Championship with Haas, with Sauber, with Racing Bulls. There's a big fight between that 6th and 9th position. This is the car that Racing Bulls, at least in Las Vegas, will hope will get them there. Another couple of renders as well. So they cooked up quite a few renders on this, and understandably so, because it is pretty spectacular. Plenty of other updates. There's a two-stop strategy mandated in Qatar. So if you guys aren't aware of this, it's a 57-lap Grand Prix. They are mandating, I think it's 57, they're mandating 25-lap stints only for the tyres, because otherwise they might explode over the curbs and completely structurally decomposite, as it were. So they're mandating that there. They also may mandate the same thing next year on every Grand Prix. That was a rumour that what they've done in Monaco, what they're now doing in Qatar for different reasons, might be mandated next year anyway. Apparently, though, the idea is on pause. Many of the F1 teams are like, not sure that's a good idea, which I also understand. I think if you're going to do it, you do it by mandating all 3 of the compounds are used, rather than currently you're mandating 2, which, of course, only mandates a one-stop guaranteed. I think that's an option. Is it the best way to go? I think the jury's still out on that. Couple of other big updates. This is Jason Somerville. He's been working with the FIA for some time. He will be joining a Formula 1 team next season. He's got 6 months of gardening leave, but he is currently the head of FIA aerodynamics. He has effectively designed, at least had a key role in designing, these regulations, and he will be leaving the FIA to go and join an F1 team. Now, this happens relatively frequently. People go from teams to the FIA, then they go from the FIA back to teams. The FIA is not a for-profit institution, apparently, so the teams can offer these guys more money. There are gardening leave programs. It's a known thing in F1, but it's always interesting when you've got the head of aero and the governing body joining a team. That's obviously going to be pretty valuable to said team. So where's he going to go? You might think, maybe Ferrari will go and get him, right? They need a guy like this, surely, to come into their technical division, given their recent struggles. But apparently the answer is no. He will instead be ending up at Cadillac, a Ferrari-powered team for now, but nonetheless a pretty big signing, right? Cadillac are signing a lot of big names. They've gone from 0 staff to 400 staff relatively swiftly, and this is apparently another one that will be on board. 6 months of gardening leave, but still, when Cadillac really tried to get rolling for 2027, 2028, he could be a very valuable asset indeed. The other updates coming out of Auto Racer is around next year's cars. I could have dived into more detail than this, but we've got some other Leclerc-related stuff to talk about instead. But over the last few days, it's become clear that the Ferrari for next season will be using a pushrod rear suspension and a pushrod front suspension geometry as well. Now, in this era of regs, in 2022 and beyond, Red Bull and Adrian Newey, they led the way with a pushrod rear and a pull rod front. Now, that is what most teams over the last few years have now gone towards. Ferrari, they actually had the precise opposite of that for almost the entire period. But this year they kept their pull rod rear, but they went pull rod front. It hasn't massively worked out. So next generation, and McLaren, Mercedes, they've all gone down the pushrod rear suspension approach that Adrian Newey pioneered in these regs and has worked well. Ferrari never did that. Is that the primary cause of their issues? Not necessarily, but it may well have been a contributing factor. Now, in 2026, it's the RB22, and Pierre Wache and the technical team over there, they believe they want to go a different way. So they're keeping the pushrod rear suspension. As we know, next year's regs are very different to the current regs. There's no longer any Venturi tunnels on the floor, but ground effect will still be somewhat relevant, although not massively. The cars will run in a different way. Rake is possible again on these cars. So it's a very different aerodynamic challenge. The point is the pushrod rear suspension that Newey has used for a long time, Red Bull are going to keep that, but they're also going to go push rods at the front, which is the same thing that Ferrari are rumouredly doing next year as well. It is not what Red Bull have done before. Now, I do wonder what Newey will cook up on Aston Martin. That's a very interesting question. We don't really have any rumours about that yet. Is he going to switch it up? Is he going to go a different way? Or is he going to follow the same approach he did at Red Bull in 2022 and beyond? Or are many of the teams going to prefer a double pushrod setup? Because Ferrari are going that way. For the first time in a decade and a half, they've gone for a pushrod rear. It seems Red Bull may do a similar thing. So is this a good idea? Red Bull following the same approach as Ferrari? Is that something the teams have figured out? Or are there other ways to find success in next year's regs as well? Of course, critically, the engine for next year is going to be a key component. This was, if you're a Red Bull Max fan, somewhat concerning. I think we know that Christian Horner, even before he left, mentions that it would be an embarrassment if Mercedes were to get beaten by Red Bull next year, which is not a great sign for their engine program. Other rumours, though, have suggested that actually no, Red Bull powertrains is actually in a decent spot. Maybe the reliability isn't perfect, but it's better than it could be. But Ben Hodgkinson says, technical director of Red Bull Powertrains, they probably are able to start testing long before we were. That gives them a very big advantage. I think a fair amount of the power unit is comparable to the current generation, though. So this is interesting. He thinks that Mercedes have a very big advantage when it comes to testing. Is it going to be a massive advantage in terms of pure performance? That's a question we're not going to have the answer to until maybe testing, but mainly Australia, Melbourne next year. Let's talk about Las Vegas. This is Las Vegas over the last couple of days. There has been some flooding. It's not been pretty out there. Maybe some of you guys are local to Vegas and have been suffering some of the consequences. Again, let's not forget there were some serious riots going on in Brazil. I think it was rioting anyway, before the Grand Prix, and people were like, oh, they're going to cancel the race. It's not going to go ahead. Look, I remember Saudi Arabia when there were missiles hitting the track a few years ago, and we still raced. So the race will go ahead. The race will not be cancelled unless it absolutely has to be. We saw it in Imola, right? It got cancelled a couple of years ago. And it has been an issue in Vegas, but it seems like things are okay. John Noble put this picture out of the circuit and the conditions, and you can see that it's a little bit wet, but probably where it matters on the strip, it's going to be okay just in time for the Grand Prix. So I know that some Lando Norris fans were like, okay, maybe no race is fine with a sizable championship lead the way that things stand, but it looks like we will get something to that effect. The weather is set to be this. There could be some light rain in FP2, that's possible. The other days likely dry and relatively cold, but not cold, right? 14 degrees. I think at the dead of night it's expected to go down to roughly 8 degrees Celsius, but when the race starts, it may well cool down as the race goes on. That could benefit Mercedes, it might not. Last year, it certainly was a beneficial factor. Lando's got a special helmet, I think, this weekend as well. He's actually got on his helmet some pictures of his kind of most famous Grand Prix results, in a way. First win in Miami, first home win, of course, this year in Silverstone. We'll see if he can replicate what happened the last couple of times at Vegas. We talked about this with regard to Piastri going into Mexico, certainly following his performance in Austin and even Brazil. Piastri not had a great time around those circuits. It's not like Piastri has had a great time at Vegas either. But Lando certainly hasn't, crashing out in 2023, last year finishing only 6th. So it's not at all been a pretty race for McLaren over the last couple of years. They have struggled around this circuit. It hasn't suited the characteristics of their car massively, similar to Monza in some ways, but also with some other features too. I think McLaren are probably going to be better this year. They're going to take a lot of learnings for the last couple of years, but this is Max Verstappen's chance, if ever there was one. And it's the only circuit on the calendar that they've not podiumed, right? The last couple of years, both occasions they were off the podium, and quite substantially so. So we'll see where McLaren end up. It's been an okay circuit for Ferrari over the last couple of years. 2023, notably Leclerc with that incredible move on Sergio Perez at the end of the race, but it was still Max that took the victory. Hamilton, Leclerc, they were in Vegas amid all of the recent Ferrari drama. So continual talk about this going into the weekend. Jenson Button was asked for some comment on Ferrari. He says it's very easy for John Elkann, instead of talking publicly, to go and find your driver and actually have a word with him, right? He's only got 2 cars in the garage. It's very easy to talk to your driver and say, hey, we prefer you not to comment in that way. That's not the way that we do business, not the way that we work as a team. And if you would go say those things about maybe Leclerc or Hamilton's comments to the press, it's like, okay, fair enough, John, I get it. Maybe we'll calm that down a little bit. But instead of that, John Elkann goes straight to the public and says the drivers have got to shut up and focus on driving the car. It's not ideal. You've even got a former Ferrari mechanic here saying that Leclerc's incredibly fast, used to driving a car that's more, let's say, pointy, on eggshells. Hamilton's also quick. He needs a more stable car. If you listen to Lewis, you can improve long term. It takes time, like with Schumacher, like with Todd. Patience was needed at first, but results came later. I would give Lewis my full trust, even if the stopwatch doesn't favour him now. Leclerc would also benefit from that, but it could be even if they do this Ferrari, and I'm not sure they will. Too little, too late. Johnny Herbert gave his thoughts as well and said, look, Hamilton knows what he's doing. The problem's in the factory. If the drivers had the car they needed, they wouldn't need to make these type of comments. So again, frustration from the Ferrari side, and also frustration from the drivers as well. And this is now the key points that we come to today on the future of Charles Leclerc. As we've said a number of times, Hamilton will be here for the longer term at Ferrari. He's not going to leave and go and join another team. Ferrari, I don't imagine anyway. Ferrari will be, I think, his last F1 team. Yes, Ferrari may have other ideas, but I think Hamilton really wants to see Ferrari succeed, or at least play a part in their revival to some extent over the next couple of years. But that may not happen, right? It may not happen. Ferrari haven't won in 2 decades. Is that going to change anytime soon? And Charles Leclerc is the one with more to lose here, right? Hamilton, yes, he would love to win a title at Ferrari, but he's unlikely to be leaving to go and chase competitiveness elsewhere at this point in his career, right? He's achieved everything that he could have ever dreamed to achieve. Now it's about trying to make it work at Ferrari. But Leclerc, that is not the case. Yes, he has plenty of pole positions, but with respect to his pole positions, not that many Grand Prix victories, and not ever really a compelling title bid. 2022 looked very good until it didn't. The car was unreliable. Yes, he made mistakes with his own driving, but the Red Bull improved dramatically through the season. People talk about the technical directive, but, the Red Bull was probably always going to win that championship. It was just a more sound, fundamental car that was going to come good once they got the weight down regardless. Leclerc's been competitive, certainly in 2024. I think he was probably the second best driver on the grid, apart from Max Verstappen. But he has 0 championships to his name, and arguably he is in the prime of his career right now, and it's getting wasted by the Lift Coast 25. So this was a rumour back in October, about a month and a half ago, that Leclerc leaving Ferrari in 27 was plausible. His team, his management were having conversations with others, and that has now reached a kind of fever pitch to some degree today. Loads of rumours starting to emerge that Aston Martin are very interested. Now, this should be no surprise that Aston Martin are interested. Actually, we'll discuss this tweet in a second. We'll go to this one first. So, Aston Martin reportedly has repeatedly approached Charles Leclerc's representative. Now, again, there are some questions. Is it Charles Leclerc's team talking with Aston? Is it Aston talking with Charles Leclerc? But apparently, Aston want him. They even maybe want him now, like 2026. That would be a fascinating switch up. I don't think it's especially likely unless Leclerc has no confidence in Ferrari next year. it would be an unbelievable all-time fumble if Leclerc, having committed effectively his whole career to the Scuderia, leaves and then suddenly they actually do produce the car. So that would be a massive risk from Leclerc's side. But from Melbourne 2026, I mean, let's be honest, from Barcelona testing and from Bahrain testing, Leclerc's going to know if this car's got what it takes or not. And if it doesn't, then surely that might be the time you've got to consider getting out of there. It would be such a shame for Ferrari, for Leclerc. It'd be such a sad moment, but it might be an inevitable one. If Leclerc wants to achieve what his talent is clearly capable of, staying at Ferrari forever. I mean, what did Vettel put on his helmet? He wrote like a statement on his helmet and was like, basically, don't waste your talent, I think was the implication. We know what Vettel experienced and others at Ferrari too. So rumour has it, according to Leah Torini, it's no surprise that Nicholas Todd, who is his manager effectively, has been repeatedly contacted by Aston Martin executives. Aston have the newie car, they have the Honda engine, and Alonso will be getting on at that point. Now, many Alonso fans will want him to stay, at least give it a good go. But, you know, he's not wrong that the lineup at Aston Martin right now is Lance Stroll, the boss's son, effectively. And I don't think Lance Stroll is quite as bad as people think, but he's not good with respect to, the top level of Formula One drivers. And then Alonso, who is still driving at a very solid level, and I still rate very highly, but he is getting on a bit, right? Like, he is late mid-40s now, and in the near future he will be late 40s, and it's difficult to believe that Alonso would still be performing at the level of a Charles Leclerc, let's say, in that hypothetical. So that's the big rumour of the day. And as I say, there's other accounts. I mean, this one, not sure how well connected F1 Karate is, but they say this: it would surprise me if Charles Leclerc doesn't join Aston Martin. These negotiations are very advanced. So this is now getting real interesting. Just to add more fuel to the fire, actually, it was also noted, I think it was another tweet from this account that I'll just go up and find real quick. They were talking about this Celsius partnership. So there's currently a partnership with Ferrari and the energy drink company Celsius. Reportedly, they will be joining Aston Martin in 2026. Now, notably with regard to this, yes, they're a Ferrari partner, but they are also a direct Charles Leclerc sponsor. This is the Charles Leclerc website, and these are his choice of current partners. If you want to partner with him, then you can click this button and it's just brought up an email link, so I'm not going to do that. But the point is, if you go on his website, you'll see the rolling partnerships, one of which is a direct partnership since 2024 with Celsius. There's even a picture of him here on the website with the Celsius. So the point is that they are a direct Charles Leclerc sponsor, and the fact that they are apparently moving their support to Aston Martin for 2026 adds a bit of credence to the idea. Now, if you're Leclerc, what are you thinking about, right? What about Mercedes? That's an interesting possibility. What about even McLaren? I don't think it's impossible that, let's say, Lando wins the title, Webber and Piastri may think about other options. There was talk about Piastri to Aston Martin, right? So it's not clear that Aston want Leclerc at all costs and they will do everything to get him, because, let's be honest, they want Max at all costs, right? If they could get Max, they would get him instead. So I don't think it's as clear to say that, oh yeah, Leclerc's going to Aston for sure, they're going to kick out Stroll or they're going to kick out Alonso or whatever. Of course, there would be some concerns from the Alonso camp, because is Stroll going to get fired or kicked out or not renewed? I don't really know about that so much. And there are plenty of other drivers that Aston Martin would also want. There's also the Mercedes angle, right? Although I think pretty unlikely that Russell or Antonelli are going anywhere over the next couple of years. I expect Antonelli to really kick on next year, and I rate Russell very highly. I don't see how Leclerc to Red Bull would ever make any sense. As I say, maybe McLaren is a strange outside possibility, but Aston would be, if you're going to leave Ferrari, maybe the most reasonable team to go and join, given the circumstances. But I don't see it happening immediately, but there is reason to believe that in 2027 this could be very plausible. Especially today, there's more rumours than ever indicating that those negotiations are pretty advanced. if Aston Martin can somehow convince him to leave and literally join next year, I'll be shocked. But I think for 2027, it's absolutely a possibility. So intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Just one final stat for you all. There could be a new record broken in Las Vegas. So remarkably enough, since the summer break, every single race has been won from pole, right? So these are the stats on that. Zandvoort through to Sao Paulo. Even the sprints, it's been the same story as well. So the idea of race to turn one, qualifying championship, even I think Vasseur said that right at the start of the season, it's effectively a qualifying championship. This equals the most ever, and if it happens in Vegas as well, this will tie the all-time records for the most consecutive Grand Prix won from pole in the history of Formula 1. So quite the stat to keep your eyes on this weekend. Very much intrigued to your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.